Good evening, Pure Potential members. Um, Nikolai is expressing something you're probably all feeling right now. What is this intro song? Um, I'm in StreamYard again, and I think you guys can hear me from the beginning. Been too busy slash lazy to upload my assets to StreamYard and figure out how to use them the same way that I use them in OBS. So I haven't added the actual music in. I'll figure it out. It's a work in progress, but just trying to get a little bit more comfortable with this. But I see a lot of you guys here in the chat, so clearly Saturday night was not a deal breaker for everybody as far as college football or whatever. CP17 was first in the chat with a question, so why not kick it off with this one? Give up Jalen Waddle for a 26 mid to late first. I'm contending and have two firsts already. Waddle wouldn't start for me barring any injuries. Pretty easy for me. Yes, I'll sell Waddle for a first. No question about it. You can go flip a second or other pieces to go and get a pretty similar wide receiver anyway. So yeah, I would just rather have a first round pick. Like he's in the late one tier. Most of the time I'll sell a player in that tier for an actual first round pick because it can be earlier than that. There's a scarcity factor there. So yeah, I'm going to move him, especially if he's not starting for you. I'm learning that StreamYard does not understand custom emojis. So like these messages don't work. I mean, I'm sure they show up in the chat, but they do not show up for me. So I can't put like the custom Pure Potential emojis here on the screen, which is a little bit of a bummer. I guess I don't know if that applies to all emojis or just mine, but so it goes. Anyway, appreciate you showing the love there, Yella. Austin, what's up? It's going all right. I'm a little bit tired this evening. I've been working on a lot of school stuff all day. So happy to do some football talk, but I got some team breakdowns to get done after the stream, so we'll have to keep it to a tight hour today. Papachino asks, what is your panic meter on Patullo? He's talking about the Eagles offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo. It's early. It's certainly the offense has looked a little bit more stale and uninventive so far. Definitely missing Kellen Moore a little bit, but I liked what I saw in the second half of the Rams game. Hopefully they come out and can be more aggressive from the start, get A.J. Brown more involved from the start. We'll see. Too early to say. And the Pokemon guy wants thoughts on Zay Flowers. Last question we'll get to, and then we'll get to the actual stuff that was asked ahead of time in the member stream channel. Thoughts on Zay Flowers after week 3, same as they were before week 3. I don't want to just flip-flop back and forth on players based on whether they had a good week or a bad week. Did I wish he had a better week? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Clearly, whatever game plan the Lions were running was working. They were really making the wide receivers work. They were getting Lamar uncomfortable out of the pocket. So be it. Malik Neighbors had a bad game too. JSN had a bad game for the majority of the game against a worse defense. So, it is what it is. I'm not moving him in the rankings after one game. T-Hum is here. What's up? Good to see you guys. First question that was asked was from Matty Ice. He says, in the case of being beat to the punch on acquiring picks and rebuilding or being able to tank for the 101, or in a case of needing to just slightly retool for the next season, what are some strategies to go about doing that? So basically, there's already a rebuilder, and you just have less than ideal circumstances to rebuild. I think you just have to be honest with yourself about the position your team is in. Like, if you can't get the 101, that sucks, but it shouldn't impact the bottom line of your team, which is like, is this a viable team for this year or not? If you're 0-3, most of the time the answer is no. Maybe there's that slight glimmer of hope. It depends on your league. Like, I think there are situations, and I'm speaking from experience here because I am 0-3 in a league where I am continuing to contend because I don't have my first, and I do think that I have a good chance of making the playoffs because I am going almost certainly going to win this week, and there are, by my count, at least 4 other teams that don't even consider themselves to be contending. And so, looking at it that way, it's like, okay, 4 teams are out of the running already. It's 6 of the remaining 8 competing teams are going to make the playoffs. I don't have my first. I'm just going to keep competing. But if you have a team that's just not going to win and it can't, there's no reason to make things worse because you're upset that you can't get the 101. So I'd say getting the 102 is still better than having the 105 or the 106. You can, if people in your league have already traded a lot of the 2026 first round picks, try to find ways to get further ahead picks. Can you get 2027? Can you get 2028 picks? Do you have to go for seconds instead of firsts? You can make that work. If picks are hard to come by, you can still try taking your older depreciating assets and turning them into younger players. Pick your spots on rookies and second year players that you think are going to hold their value or could gain value. Look at the rankings, try to find guys that you think you like the value on. So I think that nothing really fundamentally changes. You're just looking for the angles that you can use to benefit your team the most, despite the negative circumstances. And I'm in a league, at least one league like that, with some really stingy Twitter folk who don't want to pay up for, like, these are like kind of your typical zero RB, only really want rookies and young players type of crowd. And these guys are willing to compete, but they don't fall for a lot of stuff that I feel like is common. Like, they don't chase depth. They don't want to move their firsts. They know that consolidating is the move. So, like, I've been holding Jakobi Meyers in this league. Can't get anybody to give me a second because there's only like 7 or 8 teams that are competing. Those teams already have good starting lineups. They're not really interested in trading me a pick for Jakobi Meyers if he's not going to be in their lineup or like a significant upgrade over what they have. So I'm just stuck with them. And I'm stuck with him. I'm stuck with some other players. I'm probably not going to get the 101 because there's another team that's just more vacant than mine. And I'm not sure that I can get the requisite value that I need to move some of these players that I've been holding. So it happens. You find yourself in those positions and you just try to make the most of it, I guess is what I would say. Sorry, guys. My hair is bugging me right now. I don't know why. So yeah, that would be that. The thing I'm probably most excited to talk about was Austin's question about sending out trade offers, because I've been trying to get better at this because I'm in too many dynasty leagues and there has to be a system. Otherwise, I just spend all of my time sending out trade offers and I can't really be doing that. So I am trying to be more efficient. And I do think I'm pretty good at sending out offers that are at least like reasonable. Austin, I see you talking trash. I know you have my first. I could make the playoffs. I could. The guy I'm playing this week is already committed to the rebuild and has already traded away players. He only has one quarterback. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to beat him. If I don't, you're right. If I don't beat him, I'm not making the playoffs. And if I don't beat him this week, then there's just no shot that I should be competing anyway. But I think I will. Papacino says I'm in a league where 0-3 teams with the lowest points for are holding on to the Tony Pollards of the world. Yeah, I mean, those guys don't know what they're doing, and it can make things more difficult for you. Like, it's weird where sometimes incompetent managers actually make it harder to win than competent managers, because a competent manager would be willing to deal with you and send you those players. But you just got to, you just have to try to find something that appeals to them. Figure out the right angle. I don't know. There's so many different ways to to frame offers. It's hard to like give a one size fits all solution, but I'm going to talk through some trades that I've gotten done this week and kind of how I've been sending out offers. Maybe that'll help. I will say this though, my trade offer to acceptance ratio is very low. I send out a lot of offers. It's probably higher than like the average person because I think I've gotten decently good at diagnosing what other people might be interested in and like maybe skipping certain offers that I don't need to bother sending. And I also will send DMs sometimes with trades to like explain what I'm thinking and say like, hey, you know, we could do a trade like this, or we could do a trade like this, or I'll send like two completely different types of offers for the same player. Stuff like that can maybe help to show the other person that you're like willing to play ball, you're willing to negotiate. But what I've been doing is I've been updating this spreadsheet every Tuesday after matchups are finished, where I update like my wins and losses for the week. Let me pull that up. That way I can quickly see what my record is with every team. I also put my points for ranking in there just so I can see which teams are fraudulent, which teams aren't. It also has median involved, so I can see my records. I can see my points for. From there, I start to kind of update outlooks for my teams. Like some teams are moving firmly into contender range. Some teams are falling out of that. Some teams are being turned into teardowns, rebuilds, that type of thing. Some teams are still up in the air. I haven't decided yet. But as I decide what the outlook is for those teams, that helps me decide what kind of trades I'm sending out. If I'm moving a team into a teardown mode, I know I need to go look at what are the depreciating assets on this team and what can I get for those assets. So I need to go find teams. I talked about this in the video, the team that I started rebuilding this past week. So far, it's the only team that I wasn't already rebuilding going into the season that I have committed now to rebuilding. So I tore it down. I looked at those trades. I went to guys in my league that I thought would be maybe willing to move a pick that were still on that verge of competing. A couple people I just messaged them and I'm like, hey, are you competing? Are you interested in any of these players? And from there, I was able to talk through some of these deals. So I got those 5 trades finished. What I'm also doing as I go and check my points for rankings in those leagues and kind of look over the roster, I'm thinking about, what were the injuries that happened this week? Do I have teams that are now down a player because of injury? I have a league where my only 3 running backs were Jahmyr Gibbs, James Conner, Jaylen Warren. I'm now down to 2 viable starting running backs on that team. So I wrote down a little note for myself. I wrote the name of the league and that I need to add running back help in that league. So I know that I can go back and I can send out offers. I've sent out a couple. Sometimes I'll just quickly send out a couple of offers. I'll look at which teams are, in that particular case, which teams are maybe far enough down on the standings that they'd be willing to move a running back. Which teams have running backs that I want that maybe have a surplus of running backs. But I go down the line like this and I look through my teams. I will write down a couple of notes about positions I need, things like that. And then that's kind of phase 1 almost. And again, I'll probably fire out a few quick offers while I'm doing that. But then I'm also collecting trade targets throughout the week. Like I'll do the rankings update Monday. When I see the rankings moving around, I'm sort of just intuitively thinking like, these might be players I can buy. So like I wrote down this week, I wrote down Tyler Warren as a trade target just because he had kind of a down game. My feelings about him haven't changed at all. Maybe this is a chance to buy even like slightly low on Tyler Warren. Probably not. Probably rejections across the board. I also wrote down Ted McMillan. I was able to add at least 1 share, I think, this week. Cam Scatabo, Travion Henderson, Harold Fannin, Tucker Kraft, Trey Benson. That was pre-Thursday Night Football, but I'd still buy him now. Rashee Rice, Jackson Dart, Matthew Golden. Those are some guys I wrote down. I haven't managed to send out offers for all of them. I might send some more offers tonight before I go to bed. But those were guys I was interested in adding. And then I also wrote down some sells. And these are things, I might write these down while I'm looking at my rosters, seeing who I have, I might write it down when I'm doing the rankings updates, or as I consume content, when I see tweets. Like I'll hear something about a player and I'm like, you know what? This might be a good time to sell this player. Like Travis Etienne feels like a sell to me. Right? Chase Brown, David Montgomery, JJ McCarthy, Trevor Lawrence. Some of these are like hard sells where it's like, I want these guys off my team no matter what. And some of them are more like soft sells. Like it's not that it's necessarily over for this player, like a David Montgomery, but his value might be higher after a spike week. And I might be able to use him to pivot to a player I like better. And so that's sort of a soft sell. Like if I don't sell my David Montgomery shares, I'm not worried about it. He has a clear role. It's consistent, whatever. But I don't think he's going to live up to how he's valued in the consensus. And if I'm in a league where he's not valued to the consensus, then I guess I'll just keep him and I'll keep using him. But if I can use him as a kind of a springboard to jump up to another asset, I'm going to try to do that. And then I also did write down a couple players just to shop this week. And I didn't end up selling any shares, but I thought I would shop Oronde Gadsden and Emeka Egbuka just to see, just like a temperature check. Like, okay, what can I actually flip these guys for that are getting a lot of hype? I'm still high on them, so I was shopping very high, and I didn't actually flip any shares. I think I didn't add an Oronde Gadsden. I almost made a trade where I got another share, but I didn't. So yeah, so all of that is trying to help me like narrow my focus because I have all these rosters. There's hundreds of players in the player pool. Then I can go to specific leagues that I maybe identify as being more in need of help. And if you're only in 4 or 5 leagues, you don't have to do this. But for me, I can't reasonably send out offers in 30 leagues every week. There are some leagues that are just sort of, they're just going to have to wait. They're just going to have to sit and wait because I need to go figure out other leagues, right? So if I have teams that are like on life support, contenders that are just barely hanging on, I'm going to be more focused on those leagues. If I have teams that are shifting to rebuilding mode, they need more attention because I need to get those assets off of my team. If I have a team that's like cruising to the playoffs, yeah, maybe it's nice if I can capitalize on some of these takes. I don't really need to do that. And so again, there's just more narrowing of my focus, trying to get to the stuff that's priority. And then when it comes to actually sending out the offers, my hope is that I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If I have a guy that's a sell and a guy that's a buy, how can I turn one into the other? If I have a team that needs running back help, then I'm going to go to that league and I'm going to go look at the guys I'm targeting at running back. So I need a running back and I want to buy Cam Scatterbo. Can I get Cam Scatterbo on this team? Can I get Trey Benson on this team? Where I need a running back. That again adds to the level of efficiency there. Austin asked, being in so many leagues, realistically, how much EV are you losing versus being in like 8? I mean, I have no idea. I have no idea how I would even begin to calculate that. I could probably have, I don't know. Like I would say I could probably have 10 teams that are better than 30, but it would depend on like which 10 leagues that I'm in. Cause some leagues I'm getting off much higher EV trades than I am in other leagues. So I don't know. Like I get the thought process of what you're saying. Like if I could pay more attention to every league, how much better would those teams be? And I think the answer is, I think there's so much variance that you're still better off being in more leagues because even if you go out and act on all your takes and you're able to make more deals, some of those takes are going to be wrong and some of those teams are just going to get unlucky. Like you can have a totally correct, I've been thinking about this a lot. It's like you can have a totally correct process decision. Like I could say, let's just go back to David Montgomery. I could say David Montgomery is overpriced right now relative to what he's actually worth because his role is actually not that great. And like, he's not going to score those types of points all the time. So like, it would be great if I could sell him, at early second type value for another running back that I would rather have. Like if I could flip him for Cam Scatterbo or Trey Benson, right? That would be awesome. If I could trade David Montgomery right now for Cam Scatterbo, that would be amazing. We'd be laughing in the chat. Like, what an amazing deal that is. But it could still not matter because Cam Scatterbo could get hurt next week, Or we could play this all out. I could get to the fantasy championship and David Montgomery could score 30 points again and Cam Scadaboo could score 5. And the fact that I was able to make that trade could cost me the championship. Or not being able to make the trade could be a saving grace for me down the line. So there's just so much variance in the game that it's like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to act on all of my takes all the time. And sometimes that's going to pan out for me in like a really good way that I didn't get a certain player in this certain league. And I think you just kind of make your peace with that. And I don't know, being in more leagues has like made me more comfortable with that reality. If any of that makes any sense at all. But just to kind of close this thing out with a few of my trades, just this segment, I mean, how I put together a few offers. Let me see if I can actually remember how I did that. So like I was able to add 3 shares of Trey Benson. And basically the way this happened, I think all of them were, no, they weren't all the same day. They were obviously all this week. So James Conner goes down. That sucks. I don't have any shares. I have 0 shares of Trey Benson in Dynasty. So I decide that I'm going to go look around and see who has Trey Benson. And maybe I can get in on that. Maybe I can buy somewhat low relative to the new expectations. I'm able to get 1 trade done in the Pure Potential Invitational number 2 because Ross is going to going into a rebuild. I've got 2 extra seconds. I've got an extra third. I'm just going to go send some picks, right, to go get Trey Benson. So I'm able to get that done. Simple enough structure. Then another way that I got Trey Benson, I was already talking to a manager about a Jefferson for Puka swap. I had like sent him more or less a straight up deal. He then countered with like way too much on one side. Then I countered back trying to get Benson. I was going to try to send him a second for Benson because he's tanking. We end up doing Jefferson and 2 2027 seconds for Puka and Trey Benson. So it's like a win-win deal where Jefferson, Puka long-term, probably pretty close, but I get the much better projection in the immediate. And then the 2 seconds sort of make up the difference in the point projections for Jefferson and Puka, as well as pay for Trey Benson. And like Benson's not really a guy you want to hold on your rebuild because yeah, he's young, but we don't know if he's a starter long-term. So it makes sense for both sides. And then the last deal was just really a simple pivot. I had RJ Harvey, and not that I'm anti RJ Harvey, but his value has dropped and he's not a guy that I expect to be able to use immediately. And so, and I have more shares in other leagues. So I was like, if I could turn 1 RJ Harvey share into 1 Trey Benson share, I'd be a little bit happier about my exposures to both guys. And this is a league where I am 3-3. I'm clearly in the playoff race, but I'm not a favorite. If I had an extra potential high-end RB2 that I could put in the flex, this is a point per carry league, I'd be happy to be able to do that. And so I traded Harvey and Isaac Tesla, who, whatever, he's an interesting dart throw in a start 2 wide receiver league with a point per carry bonus. It's pretty unlikely he's ever going to be a guy I'm confidently putting in the flex. So more or less a straight up swap, RJ Harvey for Trey Benson. And that's a guy that I can go ahead and use. So 3 different kinds of trades, I guess, or not really 3 different ones. 2 of them were with rebuilders, but one of them was just a pick, trading picks for a player. One was using a tier up at wide receiver as an opportunity to sneak him into the deal. The other one was basically just a straight up pivot or swap of 2 players at the same position. And I was sort of leveraging the previously high valuation on Harvey to get Benson. Now, that's an example of one where, like I said, if that trade gets rejected, I'm annoyed by it, but there's obviously a world where RJ Harvey comes through down the stretch. He's the more valuable player than Benson. So not sweating it too much if I'm not getting that deal done. StreamYard tells me that I'm lagging a bit. Hold on. Let me close some tabs. All right. Nico says, I sold Benson for Jalen Warren a day before Connor got hurt. It's shocking you were able to even get that done. And that feels like one where it's like, you don't need to beat yourself up about that because Warren could still easily outscore Benson rest of the season. And there's no guarantee Benson's the starter next year. So even though I have him ranked higher in a vacuum, I don't think it's a huge deal. Tristan, this is going to be me, dude. My wife is expecting in late November, and the fantasy playoff push is going to be probably a total mess for me. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Let me see if there are any other deals. A couple other recent trades that I was able to make yesterday. I made 3 other trades yesterday. One of them was to trade for Breece Hall, also in the Pure Potential Invitational number 2. I have never been a huge Chuba Hubbard fan, and then this like injury stuff pops up. Rico Dowdle played a little more last week than him. The Panthers kind of suck. I don't know. I was looking for ways that I could move off of Chuba Hubbard in the few leagues that I have him. And I saw a team that looked to be on the verge of tanking. This is something I do all the time. Like if I see a team that looks like they might be tanking, even if I don't know if they are, I'll send them a trade. Sometimes I'll send a DM like, hey, I'm not sure, what your goal is. But if you're looking to tank, like this deal would make sense. And it was just Chuba Hubbard, which obviously isn't a big piece for a tanking team to add. But when you're getting a second and a couple thirds and another wide receiver on top, it's like, okay, maybe I can just take the package and then flip that guy. So was able to get another share of Breece Hall. I'm hoping for the bounce back here to more like what we saw in week 1. Nico, there will definitely be another Pure Potential Invitational next offseason. I might even mess around with the idea of drafting it in season, like maybe in December or something, because I did one of those last year. I did a startup last December, and that was pretty fun. And it's been interesting to see how that team played out. So yeah, we'll look into it. Other trade I made was for Jaden Daniels. This was on one of my highest value teams. And I saw, basically I was just looking for ways that I could consolidate in this league. That was like my one note to myself about this league is, could I upgrade at all? Because it's a very top heavy league. So any edge I could get over the rest of the field is worth it. I ended up trading Baker, my very late projected first, a second, Jalen Warren, and Luther Burden for Jaden Daniels. I think value wise, it's fine. I think just a good deal to make in a league where you have a lot of value. And that team was 0-3. They were very, very frustrating as far as not responding to my messages. I just kept sending them offers and sending them messages. I was being very persistent about this and eventually got him to send me a counter that I liked, and I took it. And then the last deal I made last night, very late, I've started sending out lots of offers like when I go to bed because I have a problem. And one offer I was working on, I've been talking to this guy about buying a running back for weeks because somehow I'm number 1 in this league in points, despite the fact that my RB2 this season has been either Dylan Sampson or Kenny Gainwell each of the first 3 weeks. Still managed to be first in points, clearly needed a running back. And we were talking about Bijan, and he was being super unreasonable about Bijan. He's like, do you want to buy Breece Hall? I was like, I already have a lot of Breece Hall, and I don't want to give you my first for Breece Hall. And I was like, okay, fine. Then I said, like, what about Cam Skattebo? Because again, one of my targets. We start talking about a deal for Cam Skattebo, and it's like, okay, a second plus what? And he wanted my 27 second plus Alec Ayomanor, which I think is honestly fair, pretty fair. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that. I thought I could get better value than that. So we kind of go back and forth. Then it becomes like Skattebo plus Jalen Warren, because I'm like, why not have a third running back? And I'm sending Alec and a second and a couple thirds. And we're really close. And I don't know. I was just looking at his team and I was like, you know what? I could really use a better quarterback as well. And he's going into a rebuild. So I go ahead and add Cam Ward on my side or on his side and my first, and I add Caleb Williams on the other side. And I may have pitched it as a stack. You get the Titans stack, you get a first round pick on top. And meanwhile, I get Caleb, who I am rising on. I'm very high on rest of season as a fantasy option. I get Skattebo, I get Warren. So final deal, I sent away Cam Ward, Alec, my first, 2 thirds, and a 2027 second. I got Caleb, Skattebo, and Warren. So that really upgrades QB2 for me. I now have Allen, Caleb, Stafford, and Rattler. And then I have at running back, along with who's my first running back? Can't even think of it. I don't know. I have a decent RB1, and then I have Scatterboo and Warren, RB2, RB3. So that's the trade talk for you. That's what I'm thinking through. That's how I'm putting offers together. Austin said I traded 2 seconds, a third, and a fourth for Chuba and Njoku. I already know I got cooked. What do you think? Pretty shallow. I play him this week. I mean, it's an overpay for where we view Njoku now, but it's not like egregiously bad. Hopefully neither of the seconds are early, but I think you'll be fine. I don't think you need to be freaking out about that, but probably better ways that I could think to spend 2 seconds. Okay. Going on to some of the sells, because someone asked about sells before it's too late, and I already do like to look at players that I'm more into selling. I mentioned David Montgomery as like a soft sell. I'd say Chase Brown is more of an aggressive sell that I've been trying to move off of. I've only been able to move one share, and it was to one of our league winners. Schnitz wanted Chase Brown. He gave me his late projected second, third, and fourth for Chase Brown, which I think is pretty fair. Hopefully it ends up being not as late of a second for me, but whatever. He's just like in a really bad spot with this offense. The offensive line is egregiously bad. They play some really tough defenses coming up. Jake Browning sucks. It's just going to be really hard for him as a guy that's not really that talented to overcome those circumstances, even though he is getting a lot of touches. Travis Etienne, he is seeing some of his snap stuff come down, like even ceding more work to LaQuint Allen this past week. He's still got plenty of carries. He still scored a touchdown. He's going to be usable for now, but he is getting squeezed a bit in some of the valuable areas, right? Third downs, 2-minute drills. Bashal Tutin's taken a couple of goal line series. Not to say he's the designated back there, but they're not making sure that Etienne's on the field for that stuff. So with an offense that's kind of shaky, Etienne, a guy that's consistently worn down as the season goes along, with Tutin being such an aggressive talent stance for me, I just feel kind of uneasy about holding Etienne at his value. Again, I'm in leagues where people don't value him the way that Fantasy Calc values him. If you can only get a random future second for him, I don't think he's a must sell at that price. But there are leagues where you can get more than that, right? And I'm probably cashing out if I can get a second and a third, or if I can use him ideally to maybe get to some guys that I think are underpriced. So those are some things to think about with Etienne. JJ McCarthy, I'm starting to get really freaked out, guys. I'm just going to be honest. I know some of you are major JJ McCarthy haters, more so than I am. I was never really a hater. And so you'll agree with me here, but I'm just getting really bad vibes on this. As far as like, I feel like there's not an insane possibility that Carson Wentz just starts the whole year. And this is something that we're talking about on Stats versus Film, the Underdog Fantasy show. Like they think it's likely, because the way this team is built to win now. This team has proof of concept that they can win with very just like competent quarterback play. And so I don't know if the team's going to be interested in sacrificing the season to develop McCarthy. And so it just comes down to how much the coaches trust him. But I don't like that bet. I really don't. So I've moved him down into the late 1 tier, along with a bunch of other quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Michael Penix. They're all kind of bunched there, along with now Jackson Dart and Jared Goff. And I just think it's very worrisome. Like the upside is still there, obviously, because he is a little bit mobile. And if he gets in there and is good, then he has good weapons. But the bet definitely feels different now after those first 2 games, after the weird circumstances around this injury, and the fact that the Vikings are just running a lot more than they did last year. The part of the thesis with the Vikings quarterback was that it was high pass rate over expectation. That's not how they're playing right now. I don't know if it's because they were doing that deliberately for McCarthy to kind of hide him a bit. If it's because they added Jordan Mason, if it's because the offensive line is better, I don't know, but they're running more. So yeah, I'm kind of sussed out about JJ McCarthy. And I almost had a really, really interesting deal that got through, but the guy decided to just take like objectively a worse offer, at least by market value. We had sent a couple counters back and forth. I probably should have taken his final counter, and I didn't. But it was basically turning JJ McCarthy into Daniel Jones to try to get some plus on top. I was going to get Trey Benson in exchange for JCM, and then I was going to get some other piece that I could use, and I can't think of who it is right now. But I don't know. I thought it would have been a good deal, honestly, because trading JJ McCarthy for Daniel Jones would have seemed crazy a couple months ago. But at this point, how are we to be sure that JJ McCarthy has more job security and or will score more points moving forward than Daniel Jones? I don't know. I don't know if it's that cut and dry. So I haven't put them like, next to each other. I haven't flipped them, but I do think it's worth shopping your shares just because there are probably truthers out there still in a lot of leagues, and you might be able to get like base one type of value. Trevor Lawrence, kind of the same thing, but I think it's more of an open secret at this point that he is just not playing very well. I will say he's playing better, as always. He's playing better than the haters think he's playing because his wide receivers are absolutely selling him every single week. But he's still not playing well because the offensive line has been decent. He's not really been under pressure that much. He should be doing better than he is, and he's not. So I am definitely losing my conviction that he is anything more than an average quarterback, and that's just not gonna fly at previously high prices for him. So another guy that's worth shopping around just to see what people think. If there's any shine left on that excitement about Liam Cohen and the offense, maybe a guy you can sell. If you can get just a random 2027 first for Lawrence in a league where you have quarterback covered, maybe you have Jake Browning as your third quarterback and you can afford to lose one, I would probably just send him for the pick just to insulate a bit. Outside of that, I don't have any other really strong takes right now. I wrote down a couple names, like Tony Pollard is a guy you could maybe shop. I think he got in the end zone finally this past week. The offense just sucks, and Tyjae Spears is going to be back soon. If you can cash out at a high point and get like mid-second value for Pollard, I'm just not sure how good of an asset he's going to be once Spears is back in the lineup, because Pollard is very much like a poor man's Kyren right now, where he just needs every single touch to be useful at all. So yeah, Pollard maybe. DJ Moore is a guy that I'm still looking to sell, as his value, I think, will slowly decrease. Like Luther Burden is coming for his role. Rome Odunze is clearly safe. He is absolutely locked in for his role. But Burden, some of his playing time could come at the expense of DJ Moore. Same with Loveland as he comes along. Not necessarily that they play the same position, but if he's earning more targets, those are going to have to come from somewhere. And DJ Moore feels like one of the guys that could be hurt by that. So I still believe in the rookies. And as a result, I kind of have to be out on Moore. Question from Papacino. It's only one rank different, but what do you like more about London than BTJ? Just the fact that London's struggles are so clearly related to the quarterback and the offense and not his brain and possibly wrist being broken. Like if I have two players struggling and one of them is struggling because his quarterback sucks and because he has an AC sprain, which is like a very easy injury to get over, versus a guy who potentially has like a debilitating wrist injury and also has the worst case of yips I've ever seen and like refuses to take a hit over the middle, that just feels way more concerning to me long term. Like I know what London's talent is, and there's no evidence that has diminished at all. His usage is worse right now because the team is not putting him in the slot as much, because they're running 12 personnel, because I guess they want to be able to get Kyle Pitts on the field, but still have their blocking tight end on the field. Whereas last year they were running a ton of 11. Ray McLeod was playing outside. Pitts was playing a part-time role. So the usage is not good right now, and the quarterback's not good right now, but the team is terrible. So they're going to have to change things. And maybe that change is putting London back in the slot or whatever. Like there's a lot of ways that it gets better for London, where BTJ is just more concerning to me overall. And I don't think the age is a significant difference between the two. And I doubt the peripheral. I mean, I haven't looked at the peripherals. I really doubt that they're significantly worse either if you remove any of the parts of games that London was just injured. So yeah, basically that's the deal. Austin, I mean, I can't say that I think the odds are terribly high. If I thought it was really, really high, he probably would be ranked closer to that in the dynasty rankings. I don't know if you're delusional for thinking he will be. It's kind of a binary thing. Like if he just goes back to being as good as he was last year, then yeah, he would be. I don't think we should just expect that to happen through magic. There's clearly growing pains happening here. I think there's a lot of smoke to the idea that he has a wrist injury that could limit him all season. Like, so yeah, I mean, if I had to bet, I would bet pretty heavily on not being a top 16 startup pick. That's like a really high bar, especially with some of the breakouts that we've been seeing. But could he be top 24? Sure, he could definitely be top 24. And yes, this ended up aging pretty well, pretty quickly. I'm not quite there yet, but it's not insane that by the end of the year, this could be the case. Almost purely because Penix just doesn't look comfortable right now, and the offense is just worse than I thought it was going to be. So it's more run heavy, it's shorter passes, it's less creative, it's not utilizing London to the best of his abilities. Like London is the best weapon in the offense by far. It doesn't make sense they're doing everything backwards. They're building the whole thing backwards where they should be prioritizing London first and putting him in a position to win, and then seeing, okay, how do we fit all the pieces in around him? Nico says crash. Am I good, guys? I don't see anything on my end that says that we're crashing or we're having technical difficulties. So hopefully it's on him. I think we're good. You guys will have to let me know. I'm just going to keep talking. Next question was from Suvo88. What struggling offenses are you okay holding players from? Some examples include Texans, Jags, Bengals. I know it's very player dependent. Yeah, I mean, I think it is player dependent, and it's also cost dependent. Obviously, we want players on good offenses because that's where you find the most fantasy points. But this is still dynasty, and so we do want to differentiate between players that are in a temporarily bad situation versus long term. Like I want out on Chase Brown because his dynasty value was extremely dependent on production this season, and his odds of producing this season are much, much lower than they would be. Ja'Marr Chase should also be docked rest of season. I think it's very possible he doesn't finish as a top 6 or 7 fantasy wide receiver this year. Am I rushing out to sell him? Not really, because he's still one of the best wide receivers in the world. He's still very young. He's going to have Joe Burrow back next year. Would I be open to pivoting from Chase to like Puka Nacua on a team where I'm contending? Absolutely. Would I still be open to sending Chase plus for Malik Neighbors? Absolutely. But I'm not just going to try to move him because the team's struggling. So I think it's just about how much of the value is tied up in the current season. Because if it's a lot, then you don't want to be invested in that because it's probably not going to come to fruition. Same deal kind of with ETN. Although the run game for the Jaguars isn't necessarily struggling right now. But I do want to move him. But I'm buying into Tootin because he's still a long-term play. So I don't know. It feels different to me than redraft where you're just trying to get off the sinking ship. In Dynasty, it's like more subtle movement. Like Nico's expectations for the season should be knocked a bit because there was some range of outcomes where the Texans offense was just really good. And it's not. And Nico can still be a top 10 wide receiver this year, but I'm not really putting overall wide receiver 1 in his range of outcomes anymore because the offense is not designed to accomplish that. So yeah, I don't know if anything I'm saying is that helpful, but it's very player dependent. And I think you have to look at each guy in a vacuum and say like, how much is their value going to take a hit on the offense struggling? How likely is that value to rebound in the future? And how useful are they still even with this? Like Ja'Marr Chase is still probably a wide receiver 1, just not like the wide receiver 1 rest of season. But I have moved some of these guys way down. Like CJ Stroud, I've moved him way down because he just continues to struggle. And whether it's his fault or not, we don't know when it's going to be fixed. And he's not only not differentiating himself from other quarterbacks, he's actively detrimental as a fantasy quarterback right now. Austin, let's hope so. Good Puka, Nico, Lad, and Tech games tomorrow. I mean, Puka is a lock for a good game every week, but these other three guys, I would love that, especially Lad. I would love to see a huge Lad game. Actually, these are all all of these guys are now among my highest rostered wide receivers. So I would say let's get all of them to a great game this week. I would love that. All right. Kevin asked, how does a league that doesn't have a trade deadline change how you approach trading? The answer is that it changes a lot. Although I haven't been paying that much attention right now to which of my leagues have deadlines, but I also haven't been moving many teams into tanking mode anyway. Basically, if there's no trade deadline, you have less incentive to give up on middling teams, because the way that a league with a trade deadline works is like, let's say the trade deadline is like week 12. By week 12, you are locked into all the players you have on your team, which means all the teams that are going to make the playoffs are kind of loading up. Like they're storing up, assets for the winter. They're storing their food for winter so they can get through the whole playoff gauntlet. They need to have depth. They need to have backups or whatever. And that means if you are a seller, you have this short period of time that you can get assets off your team. And it also means there's probably going to be more competition for that at that time, because there's going to be a bunch of people trying to sell at the same time. So it's good for activity to have these trade deadlines. When there's no deadline, what you can do is you can sort of toe the line between being a contender. If you have a terrible team, it doesn't really change that much. Like if you have just a crappy team that can't win, you're just going to tank. But if you have sort of an in-between team that you think can sneak in, you can be a little bit more aggressive about trying to purchase points now, knowing that if you miss the playoffs or if you lose even in the first round of the playoffs, you can probably turn around and trade some of your highest value producers to other teams. Like Christian McCaffrey is a guy that I would love to have on my non-trade deadline teams, right? Derrick Henry, because I can go all the way through to week 14, week 15. If I get eliminated, there's a good chance that one of the 4 remaining teams is interested in adding that player as an upgrade. And they probably will trade their first to me, right, to do that. So it's like you can kind of have your cake and eat it too when there's no trade deadline. So that's really the big difference, is that it actually incentivizes you to just play redraft as long as you can, and then start playing dynasty as soon as you're eliminated. That's how I would play it. Papachino hit me again with another question here about sophomore slumps, BTJ, Garrett Wilson, Olave. I don't think there's anything to learn from these guys. I don't think there's really a sophomore slump for wide receivers. I think every season you're going to have guys that are going to overperform and underperform. Like we can look at just as many guys that were great as rookies that continued to be great in year 2. We can find guys that were bad as rookies and were good in year 2. Like I think each one's just an individual case. Brian Thomas is some combination of mental struggles with wrist injury, probably. Garrett Wilson is like, his offense was just horrifically bad. Like Garrett Wilson's peripherals in year 2 were awesome. He just had really, really bad quarterback play and a 29% target share on the 36th best quarterback play in the league was just not enough to get him there. And then Olave, kind of a similar version of the same problem, I guess. Like Chris Olave has averaged over 2 yards per outrun every single year of his career. Like he's never really had a slump. He didn't get in the end zone a lot. He didn't have mega efficiency because, again, he's never had a good quarterback. But I don't really think Wilson or Olave had like real slumps as far as playing poorly. Like individually, they were always good. And I think maybe it's just being more mindful of how situations can limit players, or being more aware of like which offenses are going to be bad. But if I might be wrong about this, but Garrett Wilson's second year was the year they got Aaron Rodgers, I think, right? And then he got hurt. That's what Austin's saying here. So even there, it's like you couldn't even foresee it because they were supposed to get this big upgrade. So I don't think there's a lesson, to be honest, with those 3 guys. A couple more things to get through here. We got about 10 minutes left before I want to wrap this up. Nico asked a 2-part question about tacos. And by tacos, he means people that are bad at Dynasty, for any of you that are not familiar with that terminology. He says, if all the tacos have already sold their future firsts, so you can't package 2 vets for a first, how do you muster up the strength to undersell vets on a rebuild/reload squad? If you feel that you have a vet on the decline and have spammed out fair offers on their current market to teams that could use them and no one is biting, what do you do? I mean, you just wait, I guess. You know, you're not dropping these guys to waivers. I mean, you could drop some players that are like fringy. Like if you have, who's somebody that you could drop? I don't know. Somebody like Cooper Kupp is like on the verge, right? But you could probably get like a third or fourth round pick. I think guys that are guys that are literally most likely going to 0 next year, I think you can just kind of sell them for whatever. Certainly, if you want to be patient, if you have a little bit of wiggle room as far as the max points for race is concerned, you can try to wait. But like, how greedy do you need to be with Travis Kelce or Dalton Schultz or Cooper Kupp or Ramondre Stevenson, right? Like these guys could have absolutely no value by January or February. So I would say it depends on how high a caliber player. Like I mentioned, I have Jacoby Myers in that league where no one is biting. I'm not just going to sell him for a 3rd round pick. I mean, maybe I will eventually, but it just feels like by the time, if I'm competing next year, which I hope that I am, I have Ibuka, I have Warren, I have Hurts, I have Waddle, I have a couple 1st round picks, a couple 2nd round picks. Like, hopefully I'm competing by next year. Would I rather just have Jacoby Myers in my start 10 league in the flex than have a random 3rd? I think so. I think I would just rather wait and use Jacoby Myers next year. Maybe he suffers a major injury. I hope not. Maybe the team changes in such a way that his value is down, but I'd say most likely I'm not really losing out on anything by not selling him. But if there are guys that you're losing, that you could be losing out on that value, or it's going to cost you the pick, then I think you just have to sell a little bit low. Yeah, like I think you could just sell. I mean, I think you could just sell Ramondre Stevenson for a 4th. I'd probably wait through this week and see if his role is better, because if it is, you might get a 3rd. But yeah, I mean, push comes to shove, I think you could just sell him for a 4th and it would be fine. The other side of the question, hopefully you guys can't hear my son crying. He did not want to go to sleep, apparently. The other side, he said you have tacos that say they want to rebuild, but they expect a 1st round pick from a guy like Cortland Sutton. If no one wants to sell their vets at market value, what do you do? Do you politely tell the taco that they are indeed toast, or just be patient and let the taco realize on their own? Usually telling them doesn't help unless you think they're the type of person that would be receptive to that and you phrase it in a polite way. You probably just have to be patient and wait. As I was patient and waited in the league where I was starting Kenny Gainwell at running back 2. You can sustain, like you can get through stretches of the season having a bad spot in your lineup. You know, it's not the end of the world. So yeah, I say you wait a couple weeks, you see what they can get on the market, wait for prices to come down, come back and bug them every week. Like, hey, are you ready to make a deal? Are you ready to make a deal? And maybe find the guys that they are least attached to. Whatever you have to do. But you obviously you don't just pay up to their price, and I don't think you can force them to do anything. So I think those are your answers there. But yeah, those would be my suggestions for those 2 situations. And then finally, learning from value changes. Another one from Pappuccino that he dropped in, but this was in the member stream questions. Lessons to be learned from non-rookie players that have moved in value. He lists some value increases and decreases. Herbert, May, and Adunze as increases. I don't know how dramatically Drake May's value has increased since the start of the year. I feel like he's kind of just been what we expected, maybe a little bit better. But certainly Herbert and Adunze. And then decreases, Brian Thomas, Lad McConkey. And then you also listed Saquon. I guess he's lost some value. Again, I don't know how dramatically he's been a drop in value, but yeah, I'll say I don't know if there's always a lesson for some of these things, like an overarching point to be taken. I think there's just situational context each time that we can look to. And I also think we're going to have more clarity on this as the season progresses. Like Lad having a slow start could just be a footnote at the end of the year when he ends up being the clear wide receiver one on his team, or this could continue. And I guess the takeaway would be, I don't even know. I don't know what the takeaway would be, that we underestimated his competition. I don't know how we were supposed to know that like fat Keenan Allen and uh, career bust Quentin Johnson would both come alive this year. Like, I don't know how we were supposed to know that. Um, I don't know how we were supposed to know that BTJ was going to hurt his wrist and then become a coward. Like, I think some things just happen sometimes. And I think it is what it is. With Herbert was one that I kind of feel like we could see coming, but it worked out so much better than I thought because the weapons were better than I thought. Like, I was high on Herbert, higher than consensus, and I thought they were going to throw more than I thought they were going to throw more than the consensus did, because I was looking at their neutral rates last year, that they were not a run heavy team. So that's sort of playing out as expected. What I didn't expect was that the offense would be so good, because I didn't think that they had the weapons outside of Lad that were going to make that happen. So yeah, I don't know, buying talent for sure with Herbert. And then Odunze, I mean, that's obviously one of my bigger misses of the offseason. Maybe just trusting the profile more, maybe trusting the context around the failure more. The stats about uncatchable air yards and the drum beat from the offseason. Maybe it's just that when there's such an overwhelming amount of evidence on one side, that we need to be more open to it. You know, Odunze still did get a decent number of targets as a rookie, had the high draft capital, had a very solid profile, had a lot of extenuating circumstances leading to his struggles as a rookie. And then he gets all this praise in the offseason consistently, that he's the guy, he's the one. And I think just maybe a little bit too stubborn on Rome. At least when I moved him down to his lowest points, I feel like was definitely shortchanging the potential upside there. So yeah, I'd say that's a guy I'm going to have to keep thinking about all season and kind of figuring out what happened there. With Saquon, I mean, I don't think I learned a lesson, because I had Saquon as a sell all year. I mentioned him as a sell multiple times, that there's guys come off this type of volume and they struggle, that the efficiency goes down, that last year was the perfect storm in terms of play volume and breaking off explosives, and with the offensive line production. So like, yeah, I mean, I think that there were so many reasons why this was expected for Barkley to take a step back. I think he's going to be better than he's been so far. Like, I still think he's going to finish as a top 6 or 7 running back. He's still getting a ton of volume. He still is really good. But there were definitely signs that he was not going to be the runaway RB1 this year, and it's playing out pretty much how I would have thought. So feel good about that call so far. And Nico, you asked me, why is Rome still lower than the consensus? I mean, if by consensus you mean keep trade cut, because keep trade cut is an insane reactive place that just like flies, up and down. Value flies up and down based on what happened most recently. So I'm not just ready to say like, yeah, Rome's going to score as a top 5 wide receiver rest of season because he's had 3 good weeks. Like I think there are limits to how much we should change our opinions of a player in a short period of time. And that is over my limit. I'm pretty happy with where he sits right now in the rankings personally. So yeah. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up. We're at a solid hour here. Got through everything I wanted to get through. Thought it was a good time. So I appreciate you all coming to hang out on this Saturday night. Hope you guys all win your matchups tomorrow, unless you're facing me in a league. And we will do it all again next week. We will figure out what week 4 means for our teams. We will do a recap stream. I have not decided yet what the video is going to be next week. So if you guys have ideas for what you might want to see, feel free to shoot me a DM or whatever, tag me in the chat. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Hope you have a good night.